I came back to the department in July of 1977 and put back on a platoon working the street. In, I believe it probably the late August or September, I got called into the chief's office. And the chief at that time was Russell Dwyer. And he asked me if I knew anything about an organization called the National Safety Town organization. I said, no, never heard of it. And what it was at that time was a national organization. If you were going to be part of that, you had to fulfill their obligations, which meant you did things their way. So made contact with them, and I can't remember the lady's name who was in charge of it. And she met with Russell Dwyer, and they didn't really hit it off. And Russ called me in and said, we're going to do things our way instead of the National Safety Town way. And he wasn't bad-mouthing him, he was just a matter of fact about it. He says, I think we can do just as much, maybe better. And he asked me, I'm going to take you off the street if you're interested, and you research what it would take to have a traffic safety school similar to the National Safety Town Center, and see what you can do with it and bring it back to me. And I said, well, sure, I'd be interested. And that's what I did. That started in probably late summer, early fall of 1977. So I spent that winter. I did some traveling. I visited some safety towns, wrote a lot of letters, and I took the best ideas from everyone and incorporated it into what we needed. And I knew that rain, heat would be our biggest enemies. And most safety towns were outside. So I knew that if we went outside, there would be days that we would suffer. So I made a decision that I'd make a recommendation and it'd be inside. That's where Middletown schools come into being. Now, mind you, when I was doing this, I was also given help from Rose Clark, who was an employee of the engineering department. And she worked with me, and she did some research too. She did a good job. So we decided it's going to be inside. That'll be our recommendation. And then we had to get through other logistical problems, such as if we go inside, that means we're going to have to be in a gymnasium. And if we're in a gymnasium with pedal-driven cars or vehicles, we're not going to be able to be on wooden floors because it would cause damage. So what we did was we come up with an idea of putting it inside linoleum types of gyms, which was Wilson School, Sherman School, and Taft School, I think Taft. And we moved it around. Ratliff's gas station, which is out on, at that time on Roosevelt Avenue, loaned us his lowboy trailer to move this stuff. The houses and the church and the buildings were built by a man who's now deceased. He lived on Elmo, and his name was Elisha Brewer. And he designed the houses. And the only thing we ask of him, is there a way that you can design these to fold up flat? And he did. So they have three sides, they fold up, the roofs fold in half, and they're flat. So he did a remarkable job, a beautiful job on all these houses. And Lynn Sabo painted the houses, and she hand painted what looks like decals, like the American Legion and all this. These are hand painted, and people look at them and they go over and think it was a decal. It was that good. But she was going to Miami at the time, and I believe she was an art major, and she sat down in the police garage for a few weeks and painted, made them look pretty. Then we had to have a traffic light, and we sent off for a traffic light manufactured by the National Safety Town Center, and we took it apart and it was redesigned by our own traffic engineering department for the city. So we used the insides for our insides, and they made a beautiful traffic light. They may still be using that, and it worked great. It operated off batteries. So there's a lot of dynamics that went into this, and when we brought it back to Chief Dwyer, the first year he really liked the idea, and he said, we want to start this in 78, which would be the following summer. He says, put it together, get it together. So we'd already had some of the things moving forward. So the 4 sponsors of Safety Town were the Middletown Police Department, Middletown Traffic Engineering, Middletown Safety Council, and the Middletown Schools. Those are the 4 sponsors. Later on, a gentleman by the name of Ed DeBrosey of DeBrosey Insurance stepped forward and was very involved with us, and he had the independent insurance agents come up with donations every year, and we were able to employ part of our people through those donations. Also, back in the 70s and early 80s, there was a federal program called CETA, and CETA provided us with some monies to pay our student helpers. So that's how that got started. And we operated the first year by using tape on the floors. And we moved Safety Town at that time. We would move it. It was very interesting because we'd get a graduation completed on a Friday night, and everyone would leave, and there would be our helpers and myself on our hands and knees with putty knives taking that tape up, because we wanted the gym to look just as nice as it did when we walked in. So it'd take us about 2 hours to get the tape up. And then we had to pack all the equipment on the low boy, and we go to the next school and tape everything down, and it was about 11 o'clock before we got home. And people used to comment they'd see the cruiser with a big lowboy trailer, and this was it looked like a circus wagon. So that was kind of neat. Now, while this is going on the first year, I wrote a grant it was a traffic safety grant, and for Safety Town. And we received the grant, and I don't know the exact figure, but it seems like it's about $350,000, which paid my wages and bought a cruiser, which you have a picture now in your files. So we bought a cruiser, and it was with stipulations. That cruiser could not be used for police functions except for traffic safety in and around schools, which was fine with us. And it reimbursed us for all the money we put into the buildings and everything. But the thing that really happened that really helped us was I got a phone call from a paint company in Ohio called Roy White Paints, and they felt that we needed and I had mentioned this to them, we need some kind of a cover so we can take it into wooden gyms. And they said, well, we'll research it, we'll let you know. And they did, and they come up with a vinyl type of cover. It turned out to be this vinyl cover was what the Chicago Cubs use for their infield tarp, what they cover their field with. And it was fire retardant, and I thought, this is great. It's green. And the next problem was if they paint the streets on this vinyl cover, it flakes off. So they come up with ink. That's ink. So ink dries, ink's there forever. And we bought the cover, and we had it cut, and we had rollers donated by AK Steel, and the cradles they set in were made by Mr. Brewer, and we'd fold it up just like an infield tarp and roll it up into the low boy, and off we'd go. But it's extremely heavy. but we managed. We did that for about 3 years. So we would cover the floors, match it up, and the streets, everything was perfect. In fact, traffic engineering made the traffic flow and the curves so that the turning radiuses of the car would match. So they're not squared off. They did a real good job. And we had a place for our traffic light. It was really kind of neat, and it was colorful. So we kept that. They guaranteed the tarp for 10 years. It lasted many years after that, probably 20 some years. And I think they just got a new tarp, I think. So anyway, we got a lot of usage out of the tarp. It added a lot of pizzazz to Safety Town, because when you walk in, it's pretty interesting to look at. When I left in 1984, Mike Davis took over. That's a story unto itself. But anyway, he had been there about 2 years, and the cars that we had purchased were getting kind of old. The cars that we originally purchased were Pines of America, and we got those through Hill's Department Store at cost, delivered to the Middletown City Jail by truck. It cost us $27 per car. That was their cost. And they're neat little cars, and we used those for years. And the first thing that happened was the steering wheel started breaking. So Sergeant Merle Stetham of the police department said, "I can fix these." He took each car home and welded a little thing on the steering column to support it. And then he wrapped it with a metal band. Those cars work forever. So we were really proud of that. So Merle Stetham deserves a little bit of recognition in his little invention. So the next problem we had was some kindergarten children are pretty large size. So we bought 5 pickup trucks. And these pickup trucks are bigger, and the larger Safety Town student would be in a pickup truck. And it kind of meshed well with the cars, so they didn't look. There were little pickup trucks that kind of matched and had the right turning radiuses and everything. A lot of fun. It was a lot of work because we moved it. Back then we worked, I think, 8 weeks, and we would be like, I think we were 3 weeks, and 2 weeks. I think that's the way we went. We stayed at a school for 3 weeks, moved it, 3 weeks, moved it, 2 weeks, then we put it away for the winter. Roosevelt School, Bruce Peters, the principal, said you can store it in Roosevelt. He had a room downstairs below his gym, and at that time we didn't use his gym. He says you store it in that big room, so that's what we did. And this moving Safety Town was tough. And the chief, I reported to him what was going on, and he said, "Well, why don't you maybe put it in the center of the city and let people come to it?" I said, "Okay." He said, "All right, what school would be the center?" Well, it'd either have to be Wilson or Roosevelt. That, to me, was the center. So I talked to Bruce about it. We had the cover. He said, "Put it, since you store it here, just put it in our gymnasium." Now, back in those days, we didn't have air conditioning, so we just opened the windows and toughed it out. And so Safety Town stayed in Roosevelt School for many years, and it worked out fine. The curriculum and the scope and sequence, I had written that, but there had been some dynamics that changed traffic safety in Middletown. One of the first ones was right turn on red. So we always taught the children to look left, right, left before you cross. Well, that don't work on right turn on red. So we changed it to right, left, right, left, shoulder. Look behind you, because cars coming up can turn into you. So that was the first big change. It may sound not so big now, but when you've got 20 students and they're kindergarten age. They hang on every word. And so we made that happen. The next thing was we added school bus safety. And that was very important to us, and the schools jumped right in. They furnished a driver for us every Thursday. And what we would do is we'd ride the school bus, practice our safety procedures, our circle of danger, and we'd ride the bus to the firehouse. And then we'd do the fire safety. And that worked out real well. The drivers that they furnished us they'd take the extra time to work with these kids. And what we found out through kindergarten teachers and administrators is that the students who went to Safety Town were more calm the first day of school. They weren't crying, they weren't asking for their mother. I've been here before, and that was kind of nice. So they weren't afraid of the school bus, which we called the big yellow fella. So that was two major changes that we put in the curriculum that needed to be talked about. I knew Jack Combs. Mike knew Jack. And Jack was a big guy, had a great laugh. In the 1950s and the early 60s, he was in our traffic bureau. And he was trained all the safety patrol in Middletown schools. And he was involved in the safety patrol day at LaSwordsville Lake. And he was a dynamic individual. He just loved kids, and he was at the end of his career, about the time, I'd say he had about 3 years left when Safety Town started. And then he left and he died. People don't know this, but Jack was shot on duty working a football game up in Franklin. Middletown Police used to work the Franklin games. He was shot behind the stands and almost died. And another policeman by the name of Bulldog Lawson, that was his nickname, was working the game and whatever to help him. And Jack survived, but after being shot, he was never the same in terms of health. He had some health problems. So he worked with the safety patrol, and the principals knew him and some of the staff. So I thought, we're doing all this traffic safety things that are nice for the city. Jack needs to be recognized. So we named Safety Town the Jack Combs Memorial Traffic Safety Town. And when I left, I had 7 years there. It was very difficult to leave. Safety Town was important to me. And Russ Dwyer, who the chief was, it was very important to him. We had won the Governor's Traffic Safety Award. We had traveled with cars and elements to other school districts and police departments to show our wares. Other police departments and cities, they tried to imitate us, and which is good. It kind of reflects on us. And I remember getting a phone call from Southeastern School District up toward London, Ohio, and they wanted me to come and give a presentation concerning that. So I thought, well, that's far away. So I went into the chief's office. He said, you go where you need to go. I don't care how far it is, as long as you're taking them out. I made the comment to the chief. I said, what about Mike Davis? And he was taken aback. He said, well, Mike works in narcotics. And then I think Mike had just been put on the motorcycle. He wanted to ride the bike. I don't know. He was not doing anything concerning childhood education. So he said, he agreed with me. He said, Mike is very good at what he does. He said, why don't you talk to him? So I called Mike over to my house one night. He come over there, and you know how Mike is. Hey, what's up, bub? And I said, I need to talk to you seriously. So he said, oh, what is it? And I said, I'm leaving the department. Oh, I said, but I think we have a replacement. Who? You? Oh, no, I can't do that. And he just very animated. And we talked for probably an hour or two, and finally he acquiesced to me and said, okay, I'll try it, but I'm not saying I'll do it. I'll just come and watch. Well, this was the next Monday we had Safety Town going. And I said, you dovetail with me for a week. And I had everything written out for him. And he says, yeah, I think I can do this. So the first Wednesday he took over. And I went, he was great. I told Mike, I said, they love you. I mean, you got a personality. You joked around with them. The parents like you. You can do this. And I could see the confidence was building. And then I stayed around for that graduation. Graduation can be a little different because the last session is always, I consider, a special session on Fridays. And he handled it extremely well. And then I stuck around for the final graduation of the Safety Town season is when you have a lot of dignitaries show up. And he was great. And I knew then it's his. And for 27 years, wow. And the thing about Mike is he knew, I think, every child in the Middletown City School District by their first name. I don't know how he did it, but he did it. And he knew something about them. And he could carry a conversation with these kids. And they come up and hug him. And they talked to him. They were not afraid of him. And I was the first school resource officer. He was the second. And the thing about Mike, he was approachable by these little guys. And he did things naturally that they teach at the college level. He knew what eye level was. He knew, you don't stand over them, you stand with them. And Mike did this without any coaching, and I thought he's a natural. And he impressed me immensely. And he took some of the same programs and he expanded on it. He had a little poem about your sitting with your bottoms on the seats.
Seat on seat, back on back, feet on the floor, hands in the lap.
That's right. And I thought that was pretty neat. And he just did a wonderful job.
I remember one time when funds were tight and they were brainstorming. I remember Mike did, the thought was, well, we could charge for it, and he was adamant. We are not going to charge for Safety Town. And that's when we started getting more of the sponsors. Because the Safety Council's assumed all of the financials,
yes,
other than the officers' salary.
Well, and I'm not trying to smooth your feathers, but without the Safety Council, the administrative end of it, and people say, well, they just do that. Everything equates to dollars and cents.
Yeah.
And Safety Council has always stepped up and taken care of the administrative side to that.